I want to be on the same level as a white man. If he has better experience than me, if he's had better education than me, and if he can do a better job at the job, then give him the job.
Sure.
If I didn't get the job, I didn't get the job. Don't do it based off of my experience.
But DEI, in my mind at least, DEI is not.
And that's exactly why Trump
somebody.
needs to take DEI programs away.
You can't solve past discrimination by having how? You can't solve past discrimination by current discrimination.
I don't care if the football players are black or if they're white. I care if they're good at football.
My name is James Fishback. I'm the founder of Incubate Debate, a nonprofit that teaches young Americans how to debate. And we are here at the University of North Florida in Jacksonville with Zach Kimball, a progressive political influencer.
My name is Zach Kimball. I proudly voted for Kamala Harris, and my claim is Donald Trump is wrong to oppose DEI programs. Welcome back.
Hello.
Go ahead. I saw you very excited for this.
So, thank you. DEI programs, what their intention to do is an amazing thing, but the outcome is really bad. Okay, this is not math. Two wrongs do not make a positive, okay? It just doesn't make any sense. Right. And so for someone to be like, I'm gonna take a diverse group of, people, and they're gonna have a better opportunity to get a job or to go to a university, then if we keep doing that, eventually the people who are singling out, they'll become the diverse ones. It just doesn't make any sense. And then you keep, around these debates, you kept mentioning about what to do, what are the solutions. The solutions are very simple. When you're applying to a job, don't ask me my ethnicity. Don't ask me ask me about my qualifications only. Mm-hmm. My qualifications, my experience, what have I done to secure this job? When you're asking someone, hey, what's your ethnicity? Where do you come from? Are you an immigrant? All these questions, they're influencing the people who, exactly, and I don't think that to solve the problem, it shouldn't be DEI programs. We should be focusing on, hey, we're not gonna ask these questions, we're gonna solely base it on, again, your qualifications for this job. And DEI programs are not doing that. DEI programs are saying, hey, you're from this background, or you have this experience, or from a different country. Mm-hmm. We're gonna take you instead of the white male who has been here his entire life. It doesn't make any sense, okay? So it's racist to that white guy, and it's just racist on top of racist. It doesn't make any sense to take a negative and to take a negative thing and then take another negative thing and then think that we can make it a positive thing. It just doesn't make any sense. It's not math, okay? Two negatives do not equal positive.
Right, I get that on the surface, right? And I understand, first of all, I'm glad you came to this table with an actual good idea for a solution, because that is a good idea. I mean, if there was a blinding of resumes and you couldn't know somebody's race based on it, that would be awesome, because, black people are historically very discriminated against just for the fact that they check I'm black, and, that gets thrown away. So that is a great.
So if we were to get rid of DEI programs with this new solution, would you agree to get rid of DEI programs?
No, because it doesn't solve because here's the thing. It's not just about racism though.
Okay.
Because it's here. I'll give you my own
So
experience.
what is it about then?
I'll give you my own experience. Gender is a huge part of it. So when I started in my career, I was 20 years old, and it was a largely male industry that I worked in as advertising, and it was a pretty terrible, toxic environment a lot of the time, and there were definitely DEI programs that happened over the course of my 15 years in that career that were just focused on gender and getting more females.
And so here,
but hold on,
I have a solution.
But hold on.
Okay.
That worked. My industry became very female dominated over that period of time. Not like a huge majority, but it became more about a 50-50 split. Most meetings I find myself in, it would be like, oh my God, it's actually like a 50-50 split in here. The way work has gone is dramatically better when women are more involved. And so it's not just about black or white, it's about male and female as well. That's an extraordinarily important aspect.
I'm glad that DEI has worked for you, but it doesn't mean that it works for everyone, right? It's worked for your place of work. But again, if we were to come with my solution and we were to not put the gender roles or not put their ethnicity, then that problem would be solved.
I don't know if it solves the problem necessarily, because
but DEI programs has so many negative, and nothing is nothing.
It doesn't solve a specific element though, right? Because look at the history of education in this country, right? Education is tied to property value. So unquestionably, minority communities have it's a data fact that most minority communities have lesser education systems. When you have a lesser education system, your odds to go to a good school.
But if I just share my qualifications and my experience,
but here's the thing: you can't get the experience and qualifications the same rate that a white male could, right? Even now, I have an advantage coming from a wealthier area, going to a better school.
Then the best man wins.
But that's not how it is, because I am given a massive advantage just being white and male.
But with DEI programs, the main problem is that the same two people who have the same the same qualifications, the same experience. One is being favored because of the background that they have, and I can't control my background. You can't control your background. So
No,
why
but
should
why
we
should I
be
be
choosing
favored?
people based off of
But
their
you're
background?
talking to a guy who's been favored his whole life because of just the color of my skin and my gender.
And you're
That's
talking
wrong.
to someone who has also faced oppression and discrimination.
course.
But again, I'm still standing here telling you that DEI program has too many negatives.
Of course. But you're a hard worker. You're in a good set of circumstances.
Exactly,
Your
and so I can
circumstances
do
are not
it.
everybody's
and
circumstances. and
Okay,
neither
but
are mine.
DEI programs. The problem with DEI programs, and why I'm so passionate about it, is because don't feel bad for me because I had a harder time
feeling
of
bad.
getting education. Don't feel bad for me. I want to be on the same level as a white man. So if
Sure.
he has better experience than me, if he's had a better education than me, and if he can do a better job at the job, then give him the job.
Sure.
I don't need to. Don't feel bad for me
It's
if I
not a-
got
but
if I didn't get the job.
don't
I didn't get the
consider
job.
DEI
Don't do
is
it
not
based
about
off of my
feeling bad.
experience.
But DEI, in my mind at least, DEI is not
And
about
that's
feeling
exactly
bad
why
for
Trump
somebody.
needs to take DEI programs away. It just doesn't make any sense.
But I understand how it's feeling bad for somebody.
It is
Nobody's
feeling bad for someone.
anybody.
You're taking my ethnicity. Just because I'm black or just because I'm gay doesn't mean that I've had a harder time. It just means that, again.
But it's data, though. The data shows that
But
you
the
may
data-
not have.
But the data also shows that it's racist on top of racism.
No, that's
Again,
not data.
the math
That-
doesn't
that's-
math. Two negatives
What do you
doesn't
mean?
equal
No,
a
no,
positive.
That's not a data, though. Data points in terms of looking at the full spectrum of how people are treated in society. There is no question that the black community has
Okay,
been
so
treated
We're
much
circling
worse than
around
the
the
white
same
community.
thing.
No, we're
DEI
not.
programs have problems, right? Do you agree that?
Yes,
Do you agree
of
with
course,
that?
of course.
So if we were to apply my solution, wouldn't that solve the problem?
No, it would be helpful, but it
Okay,
wouldn't
would it be
solve the
better?
problem.
Okay,
It
you're
would be
right.
better,
Would it be
yes.
better?
Yes.
So
it would
you
be better.
agree that my solution is better and that we could take away DEI programs?
No, I do not. I agree your solution is it's not a solution, it's a good idea that could be a part of the solution, but it's not a solution. Because in the end, it's not treating the systemic problem, which is there are still major disadvantages in a ton of different communities that are not
If
currently
I'm a
fixed.
person grading someone, or if I'm a person saying you're qualified to do something, if I see your
My name is James Fishback. I'm the founder of Incubate Debate. All of our tournaments, workshops, and the events that you've seen here are no cost to our students. That's possible because of the support of Americans all across the country. You can do that with a tax-deductible donation right now at incubatedebate.org. We would be honored to have your support.
Go ahead.
DEI programs were meant to reduce discrimination and increase inclusion, but all it's done is enforce reverse racism. We do not need DEI programs to be inclusive and understand diversity. We do not need a wheel of power differentiating each person. This is meant to try to lift up minorities, but all it's doing is making it so that every person's flaws is more highlighted. Why do you think this is good on society?
Flaws. I don't know if it would be flaws, but I think, look,
Differences.
sure, difference is probably a better word for it. My primary question would be, do you believe that the level of diversity we have right now is appropriate? Do you believe that the amount of people that are in specific job sectors that's representative of the people that actually want to be there? Or do you think we actually need a different approach to trying to accomplish the same thing DEI is? It's a genuine question. Do you think that diversity is already at the correct level? I guess is my question to your opening
It depends on the department. In schools, I think totally diversity comes naturally. In workplaces, I think diversity is not being correctly established because we're having quotas.
So nobody
That's
has to
not
meet them. That's the first thing I would say, is that these companies are imposing it on themselves. There's no mandate, except in the
yes, but
federal
there
government.
shouldn't
but-
be a mandate.
Right. So the question becomes, the central concept of DEI is really to try to correct for the history of racism in this country. That really is the primary reason
But it's
DEI
also
exists.
evolved into sexual orientation
Sure.
and
those that should evolve into that.
disabilities.
Right. As it
Yes,
should.
but the problem comes when, for example, the U.S. When it becomes an economic burden for the United States.
So here's the evidence, though. There is, first of all, there's no evidence that it's a burden on the economy.
Yes,
In
it
fact,
is.
There's literally no evidence of that whatsoever. DEI at its surface is essentially around two different things. One is around hiring quotas, and one is around programs that are designed to make people more aware of diversity. equity,
Exactly.
inclusion
So
in the
one of
workplace.
these
How is that
program-
foreign aid related, though?
because we will dedicate funds towards DEI programs in other countries that can also end up being a burden to the United States. For example, we spent $2 million on a woman-based climate change group. That's a complete waste of money because not only is it not in our country, but it's funding the wrong thing. We do not need transgender theaters when there is malnutrition happening in this world.
I mean, we're not really arguing allocation of federal funds at this point, though. We're arguing the relevance of DEI, and I don't think we've gotten into that yet. I mean, the relevance of DEI itself should be focused on how does it work in American workplaces, right? I've worked in corporate America for the majority of my adult life, and I can tell you confidently that there is a massive problem in terms of hiring focused based on a number of things, but unquestionably, white people are favored in corporate America. There's no question about it. I've been in my industry for 15 years. I have seen nothing but white faces around me when there were unquestionably more qualified in certain circumstances candidates who were Hispanic and Black and Asian. It is a actual problem, and DEI is trying to solve that problem. Is it a perfect system? No, but it does.
No, it's actually not, because this brings back reverse racism because, for example, in universities, Asian students or just people in general that are something other than white, they will get, even if they get lower scores and put in less effort, they'll.
But why is that, though? We have to ask ourselves that question. I understand that seems like reverse racism, but at the same time, it's in response to actual racism that occurred.
Yes, but in turn, we're putting down majorities and creating.
That's okay. I mean, look, I look at it from the perspective of we have a incredibly racist past in this country. There have been a number of institutions that are still recovering from that racist past. Look, I'm not going to sit up here and try to argue that, you know, there's this huge like 1950s era type of racial inequity at this point. That's not the case. However, people from certain races that are not white, and sometimes Asian, you know, it depends, but non-white folks are in a dramatically disadvantaged set of circumstances when you look at how white people are positioned in society. Me as a white male, I have so much privilege that some people just have nothing even close to. Just being a white man puts me in a dramatically better position for nothing.
DEI started with good intentions, but it's evolved to be just another extreme. Now
but it's not an extreme. How is it an extreme?
Because now white people that put in just as much effort as a Black person could be
speculative. It's speculative, though. Like we're speculating that there's no hard data that I've seen that shows that white people are being discriminated against, where it's actually changing the course of how hiring is going on.
But they're seen as less diverse.
Well, they are less diverse. It's a majority white country. But at the same time, the amount of diversity is not properly represented in a tremendous amount of fields.
Yes, but you don't induce diversity and inclusive.
So what do you do?
Inclusive.
So what do you do? What's the alternative?
We don't use DEI. Trump was right to oppose them.
But what's the alternative to if your goal is to create a actual equitable level of diversity in the workplace?
Let it happen naturally.
But it's not happening naturally. That's the point. It's the reason DEI exists. Yeah.
Firstly, I think we can both agree that the values of DEI sound great on paper.
Sure.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion are important values to America. However, the fact is that DEI programs have severely misinterpreted this, and this has led to inverse effects on these events. So I'd just like to open up by letting you answer a question.
Sure.
What do you see as valuable in these DEI programs, and why do you support them?
Well, I think exactly what you opened with. What our common goal is here is to increase the amount of diversity, equity, and inclusion that occurs in workplaces all across the country. I think that's the goal of it. Do I think it's a perfect system? Absolutely not. But I think it's attempting to do something difficult, and it's a difficult means of doing so? Absolutely. But I don't. Here's my primary challenge with I think everything I've heard so far and what I expect to hear after this. I don't see any hard data that shows that this doesn't work. I don't see any hard data this is bad for white communities. I don't see any hard data it's bad for business. In fact, I see the opposite. When you look at companies, not necessarily that have DEI programs, but companies that are more diverse, they are more profitable and they're more effective. And workplace environments that are more diverse are more effective. So is DEI a perfect system? No, but diversity is a good thing we want to be going for. And in the end, if there's no hard data to show me that there is a group that's being disadvantaged beyond the theory that white people are being disadvantaged, which I have not seen in data, then I don't see what we're doing away with all these programs for when they have a goal that could potentially be partially reached at least.
So DEI programs have actually been shown to be ineffective. 2 out of 3 HR managers have said that they have not seen any positive results of DEI programs. In fact,
define results.
Well, results would be when we talk about things in DEI, such as implicit bias training, things have shown that while implicit bias trainings tell people to lower their stereotypes, it actually reinforces them. And when they're surveyed immediately after, yes, their stereotypes have been limited, but you go ask them a week or a month later, and it actually reinforces these concepts, and we mentally cling on to these things. There's an inverse effect.
Sure, I think that that's a fair point. And I, as somebody in corporate America, I've been in DEI programs that, not like the training aspect of it, because I think what we're talking about are two separate things, right? I'm more talking about the hiring quotas element of things. You're talking more about the training element of things. Training is terrible. And somebody who's been through a million of them, they're useless. It doesn't actually teach you anything. You're forced to sit in front of a computer and listen to a presentation you don't want to hear. And I can see how that would potentially have a negative impact. My interest is not so much in that side of things. I think that could be done very differently. What my interest is in actually hiring a diverse workforce. And I don't think that this should be like a federal mandate or anything, but at the same time, I don't think companies should be forced to not use DEI if they want to. If they want to hire based on certain parameters, why shouldn't they be allowed to do that?
Well, so then let's talk about the hiring quotas. When
Sure.
we have a hiring quota, of course, once again, it sounds great initially. Maybe a company will implement a policy, okay, we're going to have 15% more people of color in our organization over the next 5 years,
Sure.
just as an example. But then what does that mean for majority groups? That means there's 15% less opportunities for them. You can't, just because, yes, DEI programs, they have a good intention. They want to solve past injustices and such, but you can't solve
But
past
that solves the
discrimination
past
by having
injustice.
how you
Because-
can't solve past discrimination by current discrimination.
So let's just use just a totally made up numbers, but say 80% the majority and 20% the minority. You're saying that the number is going to be taking away from the majority, correct? So right now, DEI is trying to solve for the fact that despite being 80% of the population in this hypothetical example, it's like 95% of the hires, right? So that would mean that you would have to take away from that in order to make it even with society. That's the point of DEI. You're not trying to take away from the majority. You're trying to give to the minority. And I understand that in order to do that, you have to take away from a majority group, but the majority group was the group that did it to begin with. They're the ones that instituted the structure that made it so people of color were so dramatically behind in their opportunity. Now it's way better than it was, and that is in a large part due to this societal restructuring around valuing that system. So DEI is just an example of how that system has come to life. Again, not a perfect system, but I still think there's a tremendous value to it.
High school debate went woke. I wrote about this in the Free Press in 2023 in an article entitled, "At High School Debates, Debate is No Longer Allowed." Students were shouted down by judges if they made arguments that were positive about capitalism or argued that Israel has a right to defend itself. One judge told one of my former students that if she mentioned Donald Trump in a debate, she would automatically lose. In high school debate, as is always the case, the best argument wins every single time, even if the judges vehemently disagree with it. That has to continue, not just in high school debate, but in America writ large. We have to make debate great again. We have to make logical reasoning, civil disagreement, research, analysis, all part of the national conversation again. No more canceling someone because they disagree with you. No more shutting someone down because they ain't a biologist or an epidemiologist. We have to welcome the town square of ideas where the best arguments always win, even if originally we were skeptical about them. We are doing that with young Americans all over through Incubate Debate, and our work is possible because of generous Americans stepping up and supporting our work with a tax-deductible donation. You can learn more about that at incubatedebate.org. We would be honored to have your support.
Hello.
Okay, so I just want to clarify. You agree that the training programs are bad or could be done better, but you like the hiring quotas.
Like is a strong word.
Support?
I could support the hiring quotas.
Okay.
Yeah, at a theoretical level. Yes.
On a theoretical level. What do you mean by on a theoretical level?
So I think that they haven't been executed very well, right? I think
Agreed.
DEI has been really not thought out very well from really anybody. I think when I say theoretical, I mean on the surface, I like its intention. I think it's a
Okay.
good idea. I do think
Yeah.
there's still inequity in society, and we need to solve for it more than we have.
Yeah, so I would agree on some level that
Mm-hmm.
it is a good idea to have diversity, but that it has been executed wrongly.
Yes.
So then it should be fixed. I'm assuming that you disagree by Trump's method of fixing it by
Correct.
removing it on a federal level.
Correct.
So just to clarify, is it your contention, or you mentioned earlier that private companies should have the ability to have their own DEI programs?
Of course
right?
they should.
Yes, so just to
Yeah.
clarify, Trump isn't forcing or requiring
No.
private companies. Okay, awesome. I want to talk about it a little bit more. Just to make sure we agree on all of those
Mm-hmm.
things. In one of the previous speeches, you were referencing whether or not diversity and DEI helps and benefits a workforce. And I want to talk about that.
Sure.
Just to clarify. So I'm assuming your contention is, they're more innovative, because they're more comfortable, they're more cohesive, all of that kind of stuff.
Sure.
My response to that would be simple, and it's from an article in Aristotle. And they wrote and clarified saying that when DEI programs occur within workforces, it actually makes them less effective because of a couple of reasons. It makes them less effective, and the direct wording it used is because it requires people, or makes people feel like they have to walk on eggshells around minorities, which then causes problems for the majorities because they now feel, oh, I have to defer to this minority.
So can I ask a question based on that? So essentially you're saying that the value of white people feeling uncomfortable is equal to the value of racial disparities being existing in society for hundreds of years.
I'm saying that you can't, first off, you can't clarify that it makes a workforce better if it actually makes it worse.
Well, it doesn't.
And
That's
second
not
off,
shown in
you
metrics,
can't-
though.
I am not at fault for my great-grandfather's
Of course you're
sin.
not.
I should not be punished.
But here's the
because
thing:
of it.
nobody's going to say you can't get a
You-
job. You can still get a job.
Okay, first off, we're not talking about whether or not I can get a job. I don't have a job.
Yeah, I know, but
But we're
it's
saying that
more of, broadly speaking.
The problem
white
is that
people can
you
still get
can't
jobs.
blame people today because you can't bring up the
I'm not-
past
it's not a blame
racism
situation,
from the
though.
society. Then you can't bring that up. So we're going
What do
to
you mean I can't bring it up?
that
No, but here's
section.
the thing, though. Whether or not the people that are imposing these things were directly involved in slavery or the civil rights movement prior to the civil rights movement, that's not the contention here. The contention is those times still affect
So
today.
I'm just to guess, you say that there are disparities today, right?
Absolutely.
So also from the article in Aristotle, because I really liked it and I read through it a lot, it says that statistics about disparities that occur today are the majority skewed towards the minority, and that
Well, that's
typically
'cause
people
society is
ignore,
trying to go
not
that
that they don't
direction.
exist, just that people typically focus on ones that are skewed towards the minority, where the minority is less. My family likes football. We like it a lot.
I love football.
We support the Broncos. The Broncos is a team that is majority made of black players.
Sure.
I don't care if the football players are black or if they're white. I care if they're good at football.
Yeah, of course.
Which I think is the problem with DEI. DEI doesn't judge people on the merit of their
course it
being,
does.
or like Martin Luther said, on the content of their character.
No, it's-
it
that's-
judges
that's-
people
I
based
gotta
on
cut
the
that.
color of their skin.
I got to push that claim away. The concept of DEI means not merit is ridiculous. Merit is still a decision factor that is the number one factor when DEI is brought into place. It's just a merit within a distinct group of people. So it's
I
not
think
saying,
that
hey,
it's
if you're
limiting the group of people.
It
that
is on
allowed.
purpose. That's the
And I
definition
don't think
of
that you
DEI.
should be able to do that.
Why?
Because it's wrong, and
Why?
it is reverse racism, like Ms.
But
Robbins
didn't
said.
this happen already to black people all the time?
But once again, you can't bring up the past
Of course
to
I can,
justify
because the
something
past
that's wrong
is
right
still
now.
affecting today.
Just because something that's bad used to happen
We can
doesn't
fix it.
mean that we should allow it to happen again.
It's not happening
in
again
the
because
opposite
white people are
sector.
not being treated like black people were back then. Go ahead.
So, Zach, do you believe that two wrongs make a right?
No.
So what happened in the past, should it exactly be the reverse racism? Should it happen now to fix what happened in the past?
I have a hard time defining DEI as reverse racism in general. It's not racism. It's selectively just deciding who can potentially be in a specific role in a job. Racism is a completely different concept. It's based on hate. It's based on restriction. We're not restricting white people from getting jobs. We're not restricting them from pursuing a specific career. We're not putting any actual restrictions on them for this particular job. They are not going to be considered for that one thing. That is not equal, and that is not racism.
So basically what you're saying is that but I've seen this happen exactly in like surveys, and what happened is that when let's say a white man has better education, like better things that in the past, and then like another person who doesn't have the same criteria, doesn't have the same level of education, or like but they get selected because of their race, their sexuality, and I mean it's gotten to the point. Like I scroll up Instagram and I see like somebody saying that they're putting themselves as transgender, Jewish, and all these things, and like people are joking about it. That's how far it's gone at this point, and I just believe it's absolutely insane. So what do you have to say about that? Like people can joke about this, how it's just like unserious anymore. How like some people get these jobs and they don't deserve to,
I think it's
and
social
we can
media
just see
nonsense. I mean, it's social media nonsense.
No, it's not.
Absolutely, it is. There's no actionable evidence that this stuff is happening to the point where it's like, are you gay? Did you show up? Come on in. That's not how it works. That's how it's being pitched, though. You guys are pitching it like it's like, hey, if you're black, job's yours. It's ridiculous. You have to be black and qualified. You have to be gay and qualified. You have to have merit within the job. Nobody is being handed a job for free because they hit a quota. That's not happening. It's being pitched like it's happening, but there is literally no evidence. If you're a business What is your incentive to hire someone unqualified? It doesn't exist. You're not hitting a quota that's going to pay you out. You're going to lose money. It's just not it's a bad business idea. So it's a ridiculous assertion that people are just going, hey, you check a box, come on in. It's not how it works.
That is how it works.
No, it's not.
Sometimes it is, because what the government is essentially handing to you is that you have to meet these requirements.
And you have to
or
have
before
merit.
Yeah, but the merit part is sometimes getting undermined. Meritocracy, it's getting undermined in the fact of that some people have like these things, like let's say if you're black and you don't have as much merit, which I'm not saying is that it's always true, as this person as who's like a white male, then you'll get priority even though you don't have the same level of like education and stuff like that. And the person with who doesn't know as much about the job that the white person isn't getting, they're getting the job instead, and that lowers productivity in businesses, and shown in
It's
Stanford
such
study.
a complex thing too, though. Like, you could have somebody on paper, regardless of their gender or race or whatever, and on paper they're more qualified, they're more educated, but then they're just their personality shit. And they have a bad personality. They're not a good fit culturally, whatever it may be. It's a multifaceted hiring process for any corporate America job. I mean, this is a decade and a half I've been doing this stuff. I've hired people, I've fired people. This is not how people think. This is not how corporate America thinks. Corporate America thinks bottom line focused. And do they have these quotas to try to create a different culture within their their corporation? 1,000%. But 0 times are they going to hire someone who's not qualified for the job to hit that quota, because the quota's not there to deal with, hey, check a box and move on. The quota is there to create a culture in the company that is representative of America. But you don't just put somebody there because they're not qualified. You put and they check a box. You put somebody because they're qualified and they check a box. That's the critical difference between what people are pitching DEI is and what it actually is. Good job.
What do you think?
It was great. I had a lot of fun.
Biggest takeaway?
A lot of smart kids.
No kidding.
It was honestly, being a 36-year-old and saying I'm going to go debate a bunch of middle school and high school kids, you don't know what to expect. But I got a lot of smart kids to debate with. It was great.
What topic do you think they were the most persuasive on, just as a group?
I think the most passion was in DEI. I think there's no question about that. Persuasive, I mean, I think mass deportations is an interesting topic for that, but I think I felt the most passion in DEI for sure.
Could it have something to do with the fact that these policies are affecting them, right? They're going to be going off to college in a couple of years, some of them.
It could potentially affect
right?
them.
They're going to be going to the workforce right after that.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing Incubate Debate today, what does it mean to you, these students, what we're doing, our work?
It's pretty cool. I mean, I'll say this. I was a terrible high school student, dropped out of college. Looking around this room, I see the opposite of what I was like when I was in high school. And it's really impressive to see kids pretty much where I was at like 25, being 10 years younger. It's pretty cool. I mean, it's a really great thing. So I think, my takeaway is for you guys, keep doing what you're doing. Like,
Seriously.
If I get to hear being a college dropout with a terrible GPA in high school, you guys can get a million paces beyond where I
If judging by the last 5 hours is anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
We say at Incubate that Hemingway quote, there's nothing noble in being superior to your fellow man. True nobility is being superior to your former self. Raise your hand if you're walking out of here better than you walked in, better than your former self. Round of applause, guys. Great job.
Okay.
Well, thank you for joining us. This is Incubate Debate. It's a nonprofit that I started in 2019 that's committed to teaching young Americans how to do something that's really important, it's missing these days, and that is to debate. We need more free speech. We need more open debate. We need meritocratic debates where the best argument, no matter where it comes from or who it comes from, the best argument will always win. You can support our work at incubatedebate.org. Thank you.